So let's get started on pixel art. To do this assignment, you're going to need to open up the rubric provided. Alright, so on Moodle, there will obviously be a very large video right here that I'm making right now, but you want to click on rubric right here. Alright, and that will open up this lovely file right here with an explanation of what's going on. Alright, you will create a pixel art image following the instructions in this video. Create a file that is no smaller than 32 pixels by 32 pixels and no larger than 64 by 64 pixels. Whatever dimensions you choose, you must create a square file. So you cannot do 32 by 64, for example. It has to be the same number twice. Be sure to set up your guides according to this video. Use a pencil tool to place the pixels one at a time. Be sure to save and submit your file as a PSD. You will be required to submit a second file. So I'll explain that in a second, but once the first is submitted, resize the file to 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels, also following my video instructions, and save that file as a JPEG and submit it. And then down here you can see what you're being asked to do. Okay, please note that 8 of the 20 points for this assignment is did you name it right and did you save it right. That's a lot of points. That's 40 of your 100 points, and if you're talking about percentages. So make sure you do that right, please. Last name with a capital starting letter, comma, space, first name, space, dash, space, pixel art. They're exactly the same except this one's a Photoshop file and this one's a JPEG file. Alright, so pixel art is pretty cool. We're making these things right here. Okay, not these specifically, please. Nor any that I can just Google online, because I know how to do that already, and I'm sure you do too. But you need to find something, and you need to make it. So let me show you how to do that. We're going to go to File, New, to create a new file. Alright, and what we're going to do is change from whatever you're in to pixels over here, and I'm going to show you 32 pixels, not 0.32, 32 pixels wide, 32 pixels tall. That's it, just like that. Alright, and we're going to say OK, and it's going to make a tiny file right here. Alright, just to point out, I'm at 100% already. So 200. 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, we're zooming way in. Alright, to get everything on the screen, it's somewhere between 1600 and 3200. But there you go. Alright, and then if I get a brush tool, just to show you, okay, this is a 70-point brush tool. Alright, that's one brush. Alright, so I click there. This, you can see what it's doing there. This is why we're not using a brush tool for this assignment, because you click in one place and it puts a pixel in 4 different places, or it puts color on 4 different pixels. Could you draw with this? Sure. Okay, but that's not what we want to do. I want you to place these pixels one by one. Alright, so y'all don't have to do that, but I'm undoing that. Alright, so in order to do that, we're going to use a pencil tool, which I've never taught you about. You might have used it for something else, but I've never taught it. Okay, so here's a pencil tool. You'll see when I pull up the pencil tool, it's actually a square. So when you click, it puts down an exact square of color. Now mine is already on a 1 pixel setting. You might have to change yours. Alright, you can see with bigger pixels, or with bigger sizes, it's 3 means a 3 by 3 block of color. But you'll also notice that if I'm not quite lined up to the ones underneath, alright, so instead of going right underneath like this, if I kind of scooch over, even when I click, those pixels jump a little bit. So let's try it again. Okay, you see where I clicked, and you can see where the pixels actually went, which can be kind of frustrating. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to use guides and grids here to better work this out. All right, so we're going to go to View, we're going to go to Show, and we're going to go, okay, so guides right here, we're going to go to grid right here. Okay, now this grid is already set up, but I need to show you how it's going to be set up. When you pull it up, it's going to look different. So you're going to want to go to Edit, you're going to want to go to Preferences, and then back up to Guides, Grid, and Slices. Okay, so everybody see where we are. Edit, preferences, guides, grid, and slices. And you're going to get this preference sheet. Lots of stuff going on here. You can really fine tune in all these different settings what's going on your computer, which is actually very helpful. The default settings, this is, I'm on my home computer right now, but every computer that I use, these end up being the settings as they are. I believe that by default you're in inches, and it's like every half inch maybe, or every, I don't remember, every quarter inch maybe, but this is the settings you want. You want a grid line every 5 pixels with 5 subdivisions. And what this accomplishes, okay, so again, you don't have to change the color. You can if you want. You can certainly change the color. And if you look over here, okay, as I change the color, oh, I can't hardly see that. Okay, it changes what's on there. It really doesn't matter what you pick. You can even pick your own custom color. Okay. Light red is what I have. All right, you can even change how the lines look and all these different things here. Okay. But make sure, most importantly, that your grid line is every 5 pixels and you have 5 subdivisions. Because what that does is it tells you exactly where every single pixel should be. Okay, so when you go to click, all right, I mean, you can still not mess up, but aim poorly. So if I click right here, it's going to find the pixel that I was covering the most of the 4 pixels my cursor is actually over. All right, but it helps you line everything up and see where it should go. Okay, from here, all right, this is more artistic of your grade. If you look back at your rubric, only 4 points come from the overall design aesthetic. So I am going to look at it and I'm going to say, how did they do? What does it look? Can I tell what it is? Does it look like they put forth the effort they needed to here? And 4 of your 20 points will come from that. The rest of these, though, are mechanics. Did you do it correctly? Did you set up your guides properly? That kind of thing. So you're going to draw something. So it needs to be more complex than this. You have longer than I have here in our instruction video. Let's see. Hey, it's a battery. How about that? All right, actually, let's go ahead and do that. All right, to erase, I just go get a white color. I will say, even with the pencil tool, it's a little finicky. Just take your time, be patient. You got a whole week to work on this, so that's always an expectation of, or you can know how awesome I expect it to be based on how long I'm giving you, right? All right, so hey, there you go. It's a battery. Isn't that awesome? Okay, so you're gonna make a design, whatever, use any colors you want, make a design. Please, more complicated than this. But then you're gonna save it, you're gonna submit it like this. You leave the grid on, you leave everything on because you're being graded on if you did the grid correctly. It's one of the things you're being graded on. However, the other thing you're gonna be graded on in your rubric, again here, all right, is the resizing, okay? So 2 of your points come from, is it properly resized? So let me show you how to resize any image. You're gonna go up here to image size, right there. All right, so we're gonna click on that, this will come up. And again, this is the same screen that'll come up no matter what you're trying to resize. And let me just kind of walk you around here. It tells you what the original, the current dimensions are and the current image size, okay? These are the current dimensions as well, 32 pixels by 32 pixels. And there's a chain right here. You can click on that and unlink the two. What that does is it means that if I make one dimension larger, it will not change the other one. There's hardly ever a good reason to do that. We want to leave these linked because if I make this one, for example, 500 pixels, you can see that it makes the bottom one, the width and the height, stay the same. So it's going to stay a square. Otherwise, if I unhook this, okay, and I only change one but not the other one, it makes it nice and tall and thin, which is probably not what you want. Okay, so you want to leave these guys linked. The resolution, don't worry about that right now. It's left at 300 ppi from the last project I did. That's basically how large it will print, but when you're messing around with the pixels, that doesn't really matter. And then here's what we're worried about, resample. So your assignment is to resize this to 1000 pixels. And over here, we have a 100% preview of what that's going to look like. Now, normally when you're making something huge, okay, you kind of have to, Photoshop is taking something that's only 32 pixels wide and making it 1000 pixels wide. So it's having to create out of thin air 33 times as many pixels as you gave it. So it's making stuff up. And if it's a picture of a person or something like that, you know, one of these preserved details of all these options here, okay, is not a bad way to go. You know, this is what happens when we click automatic. It's doing its best, okay? It's assuming that you kind of want everything to blend together, and you know, you don't want it to be too crazy. However, for pixel art specifically, when we resize this, we want nice sharp edges. So if you look at your choices on here, there is actually a choice that says hard edges. And I encourage you guys to click on every single one of these and just see what it looks like, okay? And maybe think of, you know, well, why would I use that? Why would I use that? But here, using nearest neighbor, look at this, okay? It's at 1,000 pixels now. You can see the file size used to be 3 kilobytes. Now it's 2.8 megabytes. That would be thousands and thousands of kilobytes. But the difference in our resized image here, there is no difference. It looks exactly the same. So when I click OK here, obviously I have to zoom out now because it's so much bigger. But what we end up with here is identical to what we started with. Okay, and the reason we want to do something like this, you know, if we look at this, all of these red squares are pixels again. Okay, so what used to be 5 pixels tall is now, I don't know how many pixels tall. More, for sure. But the reason we might want to resize something large like this is if we wanted to take this pixel art and print it on a shirt, for example. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's why we're doing this. If we turn off the grid here, you can see though, it looks exactly like what we started with. And so this file you're going to save as a JPEG. So you're going to go to File. You already have it saved as a Photoshop file. You've already submitted it at this point. Go to File, Save As. Okay, and then whatever your name is, remember I told you, you can just leave it the same name, because last name, comma, first name, dash pixel art. The only difference is that this one you're going to go click on a JPEG and save it as a JPEG with whatever name you want. Hit save, and that's what you're going to submit. Make sure you send the right one to the right place, and all that stuff. So just an interesting fact for you. The reason we start out with 32 by 32 specifically, that's how big your fonts are on your desktop. And it used to be, and you can still do this, you can actually design your own font. Okay, you know, this is the font that's used for PDF files. This little font here shows, you know, it's the Fontainebleau crest. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. But you can actually design your own icons, 32 by 32, and then go in and assign them to different things. So we used to, when I was a much younger, a kid really, we used to make, you know, for Microsoft Office or something like that, you know, Microsoft Word, we would change the icon to something completely different, just mostly because we felt like it. But people still design with pixel art. They design it for games. They use it especially though for icons. So take a look at your desktop. Look at all the different icons that you see and how they are designed. It's kind of interesting. All right, well, that's your assignment. Create an aesthetically pleasing pixel art. Turn it in at 32 by 32 or up to 64 by 64, but it has to be a square if you remember. And then enlarge it and turn it in as a JPEG as well. This is due Thursday night this week because we don't have school on Friday, because this is the last week of the first 9 weeks. Y'all get started. Ask questions if you have them.